Hello, Vibers, and welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast. It's your boy, Kai, and I am so excited to be sitting here. There's a whole list of things I'm about to read off here. Artist, actor, podcaster, TikToker, Instagrammer, author, writer, producer, overall badass, Amanda Katherine Loy. Hi.
Hi,
It's so
thanks for
nice.
having me.
It's so nice to see you. For those of you that don't know, Amanda is the host of Live Your Fuck Yes Life podcast and the author of the critically acclaimed book, I Chopped Off My Tits. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. Today, we're going to talk about her personal journey, navigating preventative double mastectomy, living her life as a queer and non-monogamous woman, and so much more. I'm so happy to have my new friend Amanda here with us today. How are you? How's your day?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, my day is slow. I went to I'm in Canada right now with my family. And I went to the farmer's market with my mom, got a coffee. It's been chill,
Nice.
And
then now I'm talking to you. Morning. That's a nice, honestly, very nice productive morning.
Welcome to life with my family. It's the productivity life over here is real.
I love it. I need some of that to rub off on me because
me too.
Mornings are rough for me sometimes. Oh my gosh, it's bad. It's bad. But I'm super excited to be sitting with you. There's so much to like talk about. And when I was prepping for this, I was like, I don't even know where to even begin because there's just so much that I want to talk about. So I want to kind of like dive right into this here. Yeah. So I want to start off with you personally. A couple years ago, I believe it was either 2017 or 2018, you had preventative double mastectomy, and you self-published a book called I Chopped Off My Tits, kind of documenting that entire process. Talk to me about that journey, and how it made you who you are today.
Yeah, it was 2018. I had my surgery was December 3rd, 2018. So it's almost 4 years ago now, which is fucking crazy to think about. I mean, it's, breast cancer and just like the fear of breast cancer has been in my world a long time. My dad's mom died when he was 18 of it, and her mom died of ovarian cancer, which is also linked to the BRCA gene. So I knew that the reality that it would be and play a role in my life was pretty high. And then when my dad found out that he was positive for the BRCA gene, there were advancements, I was in like high school, like late high school, early college. And I was like, okay, I don't want to know. I don't want to know because I can't face this right now. I was not in a space for that. So as soon as I had the courage and knew that I could face it post all of my years of eating disorder cycles and body dysmorphia and all of that stuff, I was like, I'm in a place where if I need to chop off my tits, I will.
Right.
And I can get through it. And so 2018 was that year. And I found out I was positive 2 days after my 27th birthday for the gene. Wow. And then it just, the rest of that year was prepping for my surgery, had my surgery. And at the time I was blogging. It was like, I had just started my podcast in 2018 and I had been blogging for years before that. And that was like my I've been on like online doing this kind of stuff for a long, long time. And I've seen the waves and everything. And so I'd been blogging a lot and sharing a lot of my experience free form. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, maybe this will be a big, long blog post because people were really struggling. And I started writing and it was 10,000 words. And I was like, I think I'm writing a book. So here we are.
What would you say was the most difficult part of, I know I mean, you could probably pick from the litter here in that regard, but what would you say was the most difficult part, I guess, for you to grasp, either emotionally, physically? What did you struggle with the most?
God, there was so much. I mean, I think overarching, my biggest struggle and what's really been the through line of pretty much everything I ever share about online and everything is like, I just felt so alone in my experience. Cause I was, at the time 27 and I was so angry that there weren't resources for people my age. Like it was like, you go on these Facebook groups and it's like all these 50 plus women who've had kids and like navigate it, and they're like all talking about their experience, which was valuable and helpful. But I also was like, I'm in my 20s and I'm facing this now. And it's a very different experience. And I was like, I felt very alone. And so I started sharing the nitty gritty of it all and like videos of me having my drains removed and all of this stuff, because I was like, I didn't get to see this. And I was terrified and I had all this anxiety and there's a lot of trauma. Like, I mean, yes, I'm grateful I had the choice and that it was preventative. And there's so many people I know that it's not, and they don't have that option.
Right.
But really, I didn't have an option if I wanted to live. I mean, my chances were like 85% chance of getting breast cancer,
Yeah.
So
what would you say you learned the most from this process? Because obviously today you are you're thriving in this world where you are still vulnerable, and you put a lot out there for people to learn from, and hopefully, and I would imagine you learn from them as well. What would you say that you learned from this entire process?
I think it was my first big step into like beyond the self-development world that I had been in for a few years, and moving more into like actual trauma and in trauma informed understanding. Like, I started therapy for the first time during that year for my own self. And I also experienced firsthand what both the anxiety leading up to a traumatic event, because chopping off, basically amputating a body part, even though it's intentional, is trauma, right? And moving through that, and then the other side of that event, and understanding how trauma affects us, both physical trauma, mental trauma. I really started understanding that for myself in a deeper way, which then also led to shifting how I teach and how I coach, and even to my artistry, how that's impacted myself as an actor. I mean, it's personally impacted me probably in the deepest way from that perspective.
Right. If there's somebody that's listening right now that might be either going through something similar, or might have similar fears, or this might be a situation that is familiar to them in some fashion, what would you say to them right now if they were listening?
I would just say you're not alone, and that even though you feel like nobody understands, there are people in this world that do. And while all that you're getting like thrown at you right now, or maybe a family member is getting thrown at them, is all this medical jargon and all of this like very like clinical, like non-personable stuff, that there are resources out there. They're not many, which is why I wrote my book, but reach out to me, DM, please, like shoot me a DM. I'm so open in that space on Instagram. I don't have my TikTok DMs open because it's wild, but Instagram is where I roll. But also like buy my book if you want like just a first person, personable, funny. It's funny too, it's not, and it's also a space for just anyone who's trauma, and like navigating any trauma in your life. Like, it's hard. That shit's hard. We need tools, we need support, we need community. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
For those of you that are listening right now, just so you know, I am going to link all of her information into the description area of this podcast, so you're going to be able to click and get through to to her book and her podcast and all of her links, so you'll be able to reach out to her and get more information. So in regards to the book, what was the reaction like? So like once you published it, it's all out there for the world to see. What was the reaction like that you witnessed?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a lonely job sometimes being, I'm sure you probably can relate to this to a degree. Like, you put so much of yourself out there and resources out there that you need it and that other people are asking for, but a lot of the time, like, you don't receive the feedback that you're expecting, or like the level of whatever, right? And I don't tend to have expectations in that space. I've learned to remove that pretty early in my journey. But there's one thing that I was expecting was more of like a big front end response and less of a trickle. And it's actually been the reverse. Like, I have so many people who reach out with these very long, like essay, like emails or messages, just saying that, like, I get emotional thinking about this, but like, they really like that the book is like the only reason that they feel like they have any semblance of like a support right through their own journey. And that still makes me so sad and angry that that's the only thing that they feel supported by. But I remember feeling no support. And so the fact that that can be even true because of something that I put into the universe, like, that's why I did it. It's for one person to hopefully not feel like I did. Right.
It makes it all worth it.
Makes it all worth it.
Yeah. do you ever feel any kind of pressure in that regard? Because like this is tough, right? To put yourself
Yeah.
out there and to allow yourself to be a resource for people to, to
Yeah.
reach out to and tell their story or to get advice, whatever it may be. I'm curious if you ever feel the pressure, because so like the reason I asked is like for me, I obviously I talk a lot about my mental health because earlier this year I was diagnosed with high anxiety and severe depression, something that I never thought that I would ever, be
Hmm.
diagnosed with. It's just something that wasn't in my brain,
Yeah.
figuratively, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I started documenting that entire experience, and as a result, people started reaching out and saying, "Hey, Kai, I've been going through, similar things, and how did you handle this, or what is your advice on this?" And I'm curious, when people reach out to you for
Hmm.
advice and all of that, do you ever feel any pressure to, I guess, always be at your best in that regard? Because I mean, you are a human being,
Yeah.
and as
Yeah.
human beings we have feelings and emotions. We're not
Yes.
robots.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, what do you feel there?
Yeah, I used to, like, early on for sure. I think, it's been, gosh, I started my business and started like sharing very publicly about my experience in 2015. So I've been for 7 years kind of like navigating this. And I definitely used to feel that pressure. I was like a high perfectionist, like hyper people pleaser. I coach people pleasers for that reason, because I get it. I get the shit in that space so hard. And I'm at a point now, and have been for quite a few years, where I don't present myself, or at least I work really hard to make sure that people know that I don't consider myself an expert.
Mhm.
Like, I actually really have an issue with that term, generally speaking, because the only thing I'm an expert on is my own life.
Sure.
And I'm going to share very, very, through the only way that I know how, my heart, my shit, my stories. I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. Like, that's who I am. That's what I do. And I can support other people in their own experience, both through my stories, but through my work, through my coaching, through my art, whatever. Right.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like, if I can illuminate something within someone else by them just witnessing what I'm doing on TikTok or Instagram or through my podcast or in a course I run or on stage, whatever that is,
Right.
then like that is why I'm here. It's not to give advice. I actually explicitly say that, like, I
Mhm.
don't give advice because I can't possibly give
Right.
advice, because the only person that knows what, like, if I were giving advice to you, if you were here, like, give me advice on this, I'd be like, I would ask you questions to help
Sure.
illuminate what you need,
Mhm.
because you have the answers, right?
Right.
Whereas, like, I can share what's worked for me, but I cannot give advice to somebody who has a different lived experience, who has
Mhm.
different, privileges, different biases,
Right.
all of these things. Like, I can hold space for you to be supported in the ways that you hopefully need
Mhm.
by asking questions and supporting that. But like, I don't know, the advice piece is something I've always really just kind of been like, that's not what I'm here for, right?
Sure.
Because the only person that can really answer those questions is you.
Absolutely. And so the title of the book is I Chopped Off My Tits, which is
Yep.
amazing, which is fantastic. Was that always the title, or was it just one of those things you're like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna get straight to the point?
No, it was always the title, because that's what I
Yeah.
was saying about my own experience. Like, people would
Hmm.
be like, well, yeah, I'm like, fuck this. Like, I chopped off my tits. Like, that's
Yeah.
what happened. I made the conscious decision. I didn't
Yeah.
do it myself. Like, I had someone else
Hmm.
do it, but like, yeah, I chopped off my tits. And so it was this running joke with my friends, and it just made sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I got that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me just say, I really do appreciate you being able to talk so openly and viscerally and honest about this, because there are so many people I feel out there, whether it's with this type of situation or any type of situation, that they do feel alone. Um,
Yeah.
it's nice to know that there's somebody out there that is able to potentially relate or empathize with what they're going through. The example I always give, and the reason that I appreciate you so much is that it's kind of inspiring for me as well, because when I was growing up, there were zero Black men talking openly about mental health,
It's
at
a
least none
huge
that I
deal.
saw. And so when I hear people like you talking about how you do this just to help at least one person, there might be one person whose life that you've saved, and it makes it all worth it. That really honestly puts it into perspective for me as well, because I'm like, when I was growing up, the reason that I didn't get diagnosed until I was 34 years old is because when I was growing up, I was told that like anxiety wasn't real. It just
Yeah.
Anxiety meant that you were fake, you were weak. you know, and that you just need to be strong-minded, you need to be stronger, and you need to throw some dirt on it and you'll be all right, you know. And then I realized, wait, no, that's not that's not how this works at all. So I really do appreciate you, you know, speaking so openly about this. And I know for a fact that there are other people that are getting something out of it. I hear a lot of stories from my girlfriend Abby, who, you know, who speaks so lovingly
The
and
best.
wonderful of you. She is amazing. I know. I'm legit the luckiest man on this planet.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you, because, you know, I remember her and I sitting in her kitchen just like talking, and we're gonna talk about this next in regards to, you know, polyamory and demisexuality.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, you should check out my friend Amanda. I was like, okay. And and then I went onto your page, and, you know, I happened to just scroll through, and then I'm like, oh, I need to invite her on. We need to chat. So let's jump into that. Let's talk about, you know, the world of polyamory and demisexuality. I find it so interesting that people find this so taboo in a way. You know, like it's really interesting to me that people are just so like I don't know.
That's because you're an
fascinated.
actor, Kai.
I guess so. Because I grew
Us
up
theater
around
folks
everything.
get it. Yeah.
Like when I was in high school and college, like I experienced so much, you know, and like I got to, you know, explore my sexuality when I was in high school and college. So like it was never really like a crazy thought to me. But there are a lot of people, when you explain to them, you know, we'll start with polyamory. We'll explain to them what that means, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know, can you explain to them what exactly is the definition of polyamory, and how you found yourself in that world?
Yeah, I want to just caveat that this is my definition of
Yes.
polyamory, and there's a lot of different ones that go around, and there's not kind of a monolith on this, right? So take everything as always that I say with like a learning curve, a grain of salt, and like continue to do your own research as we all should. But yeah, for me, like polyamory is really just about the capacity to love multiple people at the end of the day. And there are kind of different paths that can look like. It's like you know, an umbrella term is like non-monogamy, and then there's multiple paths underneath that umbrella term. I did a whole podcast episode about this because it's confusing as fuck. We need language, right, to understand. But I remember learning about it and being like, I don't understand, because it's not what we're taught, right? We're taught that monogamy is the only option, and it's compulsory monogamy, and there's a lot of like toxic monogamous elements that exist in the culture and systemically what we expect, especially in the United States, but really most of the world. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's really just like I have the capacity and the desire and the innate ability to be in love with multiple people. Polyamory, many loves, right? That's really what it is.
When you explain that to people sometimes, do they often look at you like as if you have 15 heads on your body?
You know, I think I've been very lucky within my own like inner circle that for the most part, like my chosen family especially are, you know, very open-minded theater folk, you know. And
we're a different breed.
And I, you know, like it's not so different to like in my opinion, I was like, oh, this is actually just who I've always been. Like I'm just somebody who, and I don't even know that I like fully resonate with the term polyamorous either. Like I kind of moved towards more relationship anarchy, which I know Abby really resonates with too. And we've had many a conversation about this, her and I offline, but yeah, like it's at the end of the day, like I've always just had deep, intimate connections with the people in my life. And I haven't had this expectation or traditional sense of what family should look like, of what marriage should be like, or even if it should exist, and about like the inherent hierarchy of like a partner just magically all of a sudden being more important than a friend. It's just never really been the way that I've lived. I didn't have the language for it for a really long time. I thought I was just a big old weirdo, which is true on so many
Nothing
levels.
wrong with that. Hey, listen, I'm right there with you.
Let's reclaim the word weird because it's the best compliment I could ever give anybody. But like, I was just always like this, and I felt really strange. I was like, but I want to cuddle my friends. Like, I would make out with you. Yeah. Like, even though we're not dating, or maybe
Right.
let's date too. Like, I always was just like, let's
Like
live in the
not
gray,
wanting to
people.
paint yourself into a corner, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, I get that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I really resisted that for a long time. I really forced myself into the boxes because, we especially in the US, but really, I mean, I'm from Canada originally. And even then there's these deep, like systemic expectations around everything. I mean, like around how we do relationships, around what we can or cannot do based on the color of our skin, based on our lived experience, like all these things. And it's like, okay, fit into this box, chug, be a cog in the machine.
Right.
And I'm like, my Aquarius ass is like, fuck no, we are not gonna do this.
Right.
I just don't know how to do it. So but I did for a long time, and that's what led me to be really unhealthy. And polyamory has sort of been an additional kind of like closing puzzle piece to my, and it was really linked also to like my understanding of my sexuality and being able to like finally navigate that with intention for the first time in my life. And so, yeah.
What's it like? What's it like for you dating wise, having to, I guess, I don't want to say explain yourself to people, but like it is something that, I would imagine we would have to lead off with because of
100%,
because of the antiquated ideology, especially here in the United States or just Western culture in general. It's something that we have to lead off with. Have you found that it's been a little bit more difficult, or do you feel it's been, okay, in that regard?
I thought it was going to be harder than it was. And granted, I live in Chicago. It's a very liberal place, and I understand the privilege that comes with that. But for the most part, people have been way more open-hearted about it than I thought. And really, at the end of the day, like, I want to connect with someone who has a shared value system. And my values are like the reason that I operate in non-traditional relationship dynamics, the reason that I am a relationship anarchist at the end of the day, the reason that I am queer are rooted in my values, right? And so those are just expressions of my truest self. And so I don't want to connect with somebody or not share about my values early on. And so if that's not something that they are either completely open-hearted to, even though that's not at the heart of what they need, and or are shared in those values too, then we're not going to be a match, right? Even as friends, probably. And so that's, I don't know, for me, it's like very early on, I talk about it. And for the most part, people are really chill. Like that's been my experience. And again, like that's just my experience. I know many people that I've supported have really different experiences, and that can be really, really challenging. But yeah, I mean, my family kind of took a little time to like wrap their brains around it. They're boomers, and they live a certain perspective, but they're also like at the end of the day just want to support and love my life. So
I found that whenever I try to explain to people, they're definitely open. They just have a lot of questions, which is always great, because I love answering those questions, like to the best of my ability. And the people become so curious, like they want to accept it, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to keep asking questions until it starts to click.
Do you appreciate that? Do you appreciate the questions?
I do. Me too. I'd rather them ask. And I tell them that, because they'll always apologize, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I have so many questions. I'm like, please, no, ask. I'd rather you ask than just kind of like sit there and like either judge or just be like, I don't fucking get it, so I'm just not going to try. I'd rather them ask. As you can see, my cat back there just living his best life right now.
Love it.
Living his best life. By the way, do you know my cat's names, by the way?
Yeah, they're based off of Hamilton and Burr, right?
Hamilton and Burr, yes.
Which tracks, when Abby told me that, I was like, that is truly everything that is correct, and tracks so much given the things you've told me about Kai. So now I'm stoked to actually get to know Kai, because this is the first time we're really talking.
Yes,
so
it is. Yeah, no, it's really nice. So I also want to delve into the world of, and this is something that Abby and I talk a lot about as well, because Abby identifies as a demisexual, which admittedly is a term that I did not know. I did not know until
I think that's really common. Most people don't.
I did not know. I was not familiar with it until Abby started to educate me on what it is, what it means, which is another reason why I wanted to bring you on to kind of like talk about that, because I think people including myself, when I first started to be told about it, was just confused. I'm like, wait, hold on, wait, I'm confused. Wait, what does that mean? So you do, but you don't? Like, what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
I was very curious. So, if you don't mind, can you just tell the people listening what your definition, or how you would
Yeah.
define demisexuality?
I appreciate that that's how you ask it, because I do think that everybody who identifies as demisexual defines it a little differently for themselves. It was a newer concept to me too.
Mhm,
Like, I think I came out as demi like 3 years ago, and I was
mhm,
like navigating that. But yeah, it's a part and under the umbrella of the ace spectrum. The thing about demisexuality is for me, it's all about not having the desire, sexual attraction, physical attraction to someone until and or if there is an emotional connection baseline that exists. And usually it also, and not always, but usually for me, it also is paired with like a baseline of trust, right?
mhm.
This feeling of safety. And that's probably, we can unpack why that is. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's some
yeah.
trauma shit there for me, for sure. Talks about this in
Sure,
therapy a lot, but like,
sure.
yeah, it's like,
Mhm,
I just don't, I'm not like I cannot do casual sex. I wish I could.
mhm.
I want to be like such a slut. I really
Yeah,
do. And I reclaim that. I'm like so stoked for my friends who are like out
yeah.
here living their best lives. And I'm like, my best life is getting to know somebody and feeling really great emotionally, and then being a hella motherfucking slut with them,
Right.
once that
Absolutely.
exists.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's funny. It's funny because because Abby defines it pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the first questions that I asked, and this honestly, and I allow my ignorance to show, because I think it's important. Like, I don't mind like putting myself out there in regards to, learning about this and all of that. When I first heard it, and I was like, well, isn't that just normal? Right? Like, you don't want
Mm,
to like have sexual intercourse with somebody that you're just not attracted to, right?
totally.
And like, so I was like, wait, and at first I was like, well, that's seems pretty normal to me, but I think and one thing I've learned is it's a lot deeper than that,
Yeah.
than just like a traditional, just like,
Yep.
hey, do you feel do you feel it's the in a similar fashion that it's a lot deeper than just a traditional, like,
For
ideology
me,
there?
100%. And
Hmm.
I have dated folks who are demisexual, and they even have like more
Hmm.
deepness to that in their own levels
Yeah.
too. And it's so individual, but I also would reflect on the other side that that's not necessarily normal, right?
Hmm.
I would push you on that, because I
Hmm.
know that like I have many friends who their normal
Yeah.
is like, ooh, I see a person from across the bar, you're
Hmm.
hot, let's bang.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's great and beautiful
Hmm.
and normal, right? And I think that what is normal, right? Like, I don't
Hmm.
know if that word
Yeah,
is
I know.
like
No,
something
it's
that
a
I,
great question. No, true. Yeah. Hmm.
right? But like
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we're all just so uniquely beautiful and different,
Yes.
and like what drives us and who we are at our core, like whether we're demisexual or we're fully ace, or like whatever it means,
Hmm.
for us, or we're just a hella motherfucking mega sexual person who like
Yeah.
just wants to get down every day of the week with somebody new. Like, all of
Right,
these
right.
things are normal, right?
Yes. Hmm.
We just don't talk about them enough, and so we were like, oh, we only know our own lens or our
Right,
own perspectives, or like the lens of our friends and
right, right.
stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Are
I
there
remember feeling really weird about it, because I was
right.
always like, I felt like I was weird and
Mm,
shy, and that like, that almost like, I don't know, like I had to like perform in order to
sure.
receive attention,
Yeah.
and like pretend to feel this attraction before I did. And so a lot of like my early experiences with anybody was very performative. And I didn't
Hmm.
realize that at the time, but it was like I felt like I had to be a certain way and feel a certain way in order to engage sexually. Um, or I felt like I was wrong for asking like people that I was falling for or in a relationship to wait. I was like, well, there's this pressure, right? And like
Right.
people don't always understand it. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I just think being able to talk about it and have representation is so important, because I know so many
Yeah.
people have reached out and been like, oh my God, this gives me a word. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's how I felt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel that there are any, I guess, not just in regards to just demisexuality, but just in everything that we've talked about so far in regards to polyamory, demisexuality, non-monogamous relationships in general. Do you feel that there are any common misconceptions that you often find yourself
Oh my
correcting?
God, so many.
You're like, how long do we have? How much
Yeah, we
time do
could
we
do a
have?
whole podcast episode about this guy. Yeah, I mean, so many misconceptions. Like, well, for one, especially in the US, like it being such a like it's compulsive. Monogamy and like life and relationships look on this like particular path, and it has to look like this, or it's wrong, or it's off, or it's taboo. And it's like, but why? Like, what are the actual systems around this? And like, reality is it's rooted in like a lot of church stuff, a lot of like the founding fathers built these things and like all this stuff, and it's like rooted in capitalism, white supremacy, like all this stuff that's really not actually things that are serving us, which hopefully some people are waking up to now. And like non-traditional relationship models have been happening for a very fucking long time.
Yes.
Like it's just is the reality.
Yeah.
And yet for whatever reason, it's so shocking to somebody that like one, you could potentially like, and what's crazy is that it's less shocking for an affair. It's less shocking for like cheating, right? And you're like, so you're cool with deceit, you're cool with lying, you're cool with like actively, purposefully choosing to like hurt a person that you love, to harm them, to like deceive them in every way. But like, if they were to honestly come to you and be like, I am feeling these feelings for another person, or just even say, I have attraction for someone else, like that's even taboo, for so many people.
I think, I guess I feel like that also has a part to do with like a person's just pride, sometimes, and their ability to just be open and vulnerable because they feel as though they're going to get judged or looked down upon when really they shouldn't. I always feel that honesty is always the best answer when you're being able to be true to yourself and true to your feelings. I feel as though, and I feel like this goes without saying, but not really in this world, but when you're able to be honest with yourself and the people around you, you live a better life. You just feel more comfortable. And it's a shame that that in and of itself is being attacked right now, is particularly in the United States. And it's just so disappointing, to know that is the direction that people want to head in 2022. Like I know I don't need to tell you this, but obviously the past week has been such a disappointment, and it's been
and continues to be
unsurprisingly disappointing.
100%. Yeah.
Which makes it worse. It's like we knew this was coming.
Yep. And we know that
it's gonna get worse.
Going to get worse. And I think that brings up like a continuation. It's not just about honesty at this point, like, and it hasn't been for a long time. It's about safety too. Right. Like personal safety, like more global safety, like like I am very privileged to be able to talk about my experience and also just who I am. Like I talk very openly about being queer online. I talk very openly about being in non-traditional relationship models. Like I don't know how much longer that will be safe to do, but I know that because of a lot of certain aspects of my life, I have the privilege to do that. And there are a lot of people that cannot. Right. And I will do it until I can, because I just want people to feel like it's, they see some type of representation, some type of feeling like, even if they're just sitting alone in their room and they cannot be open about it to anybody in their life, that they can see somebody out there and say, okay, I'm not alone in this,
Right.
But yeah, it's wild. It's a wild,
it really is. And
wild time to be alive.
It is, right? And it's not, and that actually is a good segue into your podcast here, because you have a podcast called Live Your Fuck Yes Life, in which you are able to talk openly and about the way that you feel, and interview people from around the globe about various different topics that like similar to the ones that we're talking about today. What made you want to start that pod? I mean, I guess it's a pretty easy answer, I guess, but like, what made you, want to start talking about this so openly on a podcast?
Yeah, well, so my podcast I started recording stuff for the podcast in late 2017. And then we launched February 2018. And I was, and at the time there were not candid conversations about shit that nobody talks about. My whole goal was to have candid conversations with people who are not like me and talk about like these taboo subjects, like bring people on, you know, that I really respect, that are sharing something that I see, and have a conversation, a real conversation, as if we were having coffee, you know. And that's what really started it, because I was, again, angry and tired.
Sure.
And I wanted to not, you know, I wanted to feel less alone. And I knew so many of my, you know, people, my community were feeling the same way. And, you know, we're really supported by my blogging, but blogging was kind of going out, and podcasting was becoming more of a thing. And I'm like, this is great. I'm an actor. I'm a storyteller. This is like my preferred way of operating. So let's roll. So that's kind of what it started as. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's kind of evolved as I've evolved, right? Like a lot of the stuff that's in my early episodes, like I listened to that girl and I'm like, oh, wow. Like I had a lot of unlearning to do, and a lot of unpacking, and, you know, a lot of stuff that like, I just didn't have the awareness around. And I'm so grateful that it's just kind of been like this journey as I've gone on, and I've gotten to, you know, the pillars really of the podcast are talking about like queer liberation, non-traditional relationship models, and, you know, like body neutrality and like support in that space, and really just like what it is to be a human in whatever it is today, as you're listening, you know, to the podcast, having open conversations with people who are not like me, who have different lived experiences. Right. And
I think that's important, because I know for me, like I started this podcast back in 2020. It's a pandemic podcast.
Pandemic pod.
It's definitely and I started back in March of 2020 because I was incredibly bored, and I'm always talking. And my friends were like, you should just talk onto a microphone. I was like, okay, sure, why not? Don't make me do it. So I started doing it, and you know, similar to you, you know, being able to just sit and just talk with people, I've learned so much, so much. And I'm like, man, if I didn't have these conversations with people from all over the globe, I don't know what knowledge I would even have right now. Like, I don't know how I've been functioning without it in the first place. You know, I had somebody on a couple weeks ago that is very well spoken in regards to narcissistic abusive relationships, right? I had no idea that this was such a major thing, and it's gigantic, and it's awful the way that people have been abused by narcissists. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I did not know that this was even a thing. And I'm glad I do now. And I don't know if I would have known if it wasn't for me, you know, being educated by, you know, the people of TikTok and Instagram, and being like, hey, you should go talk to this person and learn, you know, about this. And it was such a really interesting thing. And same thing for you. I'm glad that we got to like sit and talk about all of this, and it educates me, it educates, you know, people that, you know, might have similar questions, you know, on my side of things and things like that. And like, honestly, it's truly a blessing to have you sitting with me.
I mean, I feel the same way, right? Like that's the beauty of coming together and connecting, right? Like we get to learn from one another. And if we're constantly positioning ourselves as the person who has all the answers, then we're not getting it right. In my opinion. Right. And like, that's why I love things like this, because, and granted, I know so much of it has been like questions from my standpoint like me sharing about my stuff. But at the end of the day, like you also have to recognize that so much of what you put into the world is impacting so many people, just because you have the courage to share your story, right? Like the more we can just talk about our stories openly and come to spaces like this with curiosity, with an open heart, you know, and all of like that, I believe that is the path forward. More, I've always believed that. I will believe that for the rest of my goddamn life.
Yes.
And I'm so appreciative for other people who operate in that space like you know, because it's refreshing as fuck.
No, it honestly, it really is. My last question for you is this, and I like my base is 92% people. This is on both Instagram and TikTok. 92% people who identify as female, right? That's my base, and so like I always love having people that are similar to my base, you know, on my podcast and featured in the things that I do, because I know that you can sometimes speak directly to them better than I could mansplain anything. Right? You know, and I always try to stay in my lane in that regard. And so this is the part that I kind of turn it over to you. And my question for you is this: there might be somebody that's listening to this right now that has, you know, followed me for the longest time, and as relating to the things that you say about a various amount of things that may be struggling with their identity, that may be struggling with their sexuality, that may be struggling with emotions or physical issues that they might be going with. What words of encouragement would you have for them right now that might be listening? I know that's a tough question, but I'm curious if you could say anything to them, what would you say?
No, yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I would probably just share the thing that I probably needed to hear more than anything, and have continued to need to hear and remind myself of all the time, and have been reminding myself of a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that you don't have to have all the answers, and that it doesn't have to be this like all or nothing thing in order for you to be valid, and for it to be real, and for you to live according to whatever you think you might be now or are or whatever. The best thing that I've learned within my own experience, and that I see a lot with the folks that I work with and just am surrounded by in my community, is that small intentional steps make all the difference. And even if you can just 1% do something today that's in alignment with your core identity, or this thing you might think, or maybe just like, maybe you're like thinking you might want to dress more mask, like, okay, like put on something, like put on a flannel shirt today. It might be a little hot, but like, you know what I mean? Like, and see how that feels on your body. Like when I was, I'll give a personal example, but when I was a kid, or like a preteen, I was really into like the grunge scene, but I didn't feel like I could really be that because I was surrounded by like a pretty preppy environment. And the way that I found my way through that to a small degree was buying these like chokers that are now back, because everything from the 90s is back. And it's truly the strangest concept for I walk into stores and I'm like, okay, I feel like my inner preteen is coming to the surface.
I'm waiting for Jinko jeans to come back too. I'm just
truly like the butterfly clips and the halter tops and the low rise pants. I'm like, we are here again.
It's coming back.
But the chokers are back in.
Yeah.
And I remembered putting them away because I felt like I couldn't be this like evanescent. I was like really in evanescence behind the scenes. And I was like really, but I never actually like represented that on my body. And I recently, like within the last month, bought a set of chokers, and I have been loving wearing them. Like, it's just like reclaiming this part of myself that has always been so true. And I feel more me in the process. Right. And I would just say like one small thing, like, and if you do that today, amazing. What can you do next week? That will just be like one small, tiny gesture to yourself. It doesn't have to be this like, I'm coming out experience where like you're showering yourself in rainbows, or you're telling everybody, right? Like, you deserve to move through life and at your pace and in the way that feels aligned and right for you. And it can be really scary to feel this pressure of like knowing all the answers. Like, I don't know all the answers. I'm just fucking figuring out as I go. And I encourage you to just like take the pressure off as much as you can for yourself. And hopefully hearing that will help a little bit.
You are amazing. Honestly, and it truly, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot that, like I said before, that you speak so openly about it, and that you took time out of your day to sit and speak with me in this regard. Like, honestly, if this helps one person, then like you said, I mean, it makes all of it worth it. Yeah. So like, honestly, thank you so much. And for those of you that are listening right now, they're like, I like her. I want more. I want some more about this. I have Amanda's, all of her links are going to be in the description of this podcast, including links to her book, which you should go get. Including links to her podcast, which you should listen to, and obviously all of the social channels. And I know that you do coaching as well. And if people want to reach out to you in that regard, how could you help them from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, I'm kind of on a bit of a coaching hiatus. I'm taking a mini sabbatical, but that'll be coming back in the fall. So the best thing to do is just get on my email list, which you can, find on all my social channels. It's super easy. So yeah, and I'll share about that there, or on Instagram, find me there. I don't really share as much about that on TikTok because it's harder. It's like less long form. So if you really want to join the like community, come to Insta.
Yes, absolutely.
And I share there. But yeah, I would love to, get to know your hearts more. I also just launched my first edition of my merch, Kai, and I'm stoked. It's like this I've been working with this amazing artist who's also one of my past clients, and she's
Yeah.
incredible. And it says fucking queer.
Oh my
So
God,
if
I love
any of
this.
y'all are listening and feel like fuck and queer are kind of my two favorite words, it's like the pillars of who I am, because it's like this reclamation, right? It's like
Yeah.
fuck and queer are these like
Hmm.
reclaiming of these words. And
Absolutely.
so if you're wanting some fun vibes for the summer, to continue Pride Month, even though we're not in
Right.
it
No,
anymore.
we applied for an extension. We applied for an
Yeah,
extension, so
it's
it's
all
fine.
year round. I don't
Yes.
know what,
It's Pride year. It's damn it. At this point, it's Pride year. Screw it.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that you have in your bio on your Instagram, which made me chuckle, is that you identify as I wrote this down, polyamorous demisexual queerdo.
Queerdo, that's me. It's the queer
Fucking love
weirdo.
it.
Is
Fucking love
me.
it.
Yeah. So some of my community has started saying that for themselves. They're like, I'm
Yeah.
a queerdo. And I'm like, I love this. Can we continue this trend?
Yes.
Like, I love it so much. Yeah.
I love that, and I love you. Honestly, thank you so much for sitting with me. Like I said, friends, if you enjoy what Amanda had to say, there's tons more. We only touched the surface, my friends. Go follow her, go buy her book, go listen to her podcast. You're going to really enjoy it. Vibers, as always, if there is a content creator that you want me to reach out to, that you want to have on the podcast, let me know. Reach out to me, let me know, and I will reach out to them. Thank you again, Amanda, for sitting and chatting with us. To everybody listening, thank you so much. As always, God bless and good vibes, and have a good day. Bye.